Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Palm Coast Hurricane Survival Seminar 2012. This afternoon is being broadcast live on two television channels here in Flagler County, Palm Coast TV, Channel 199, and also Flagler County TV, Channel 198. It's also being broadcast on WNZF News Radio at 1550 AM and 106.3 FM. And a podcast of this entire program will be on WNZF by going to the website, and also you will be seeing it many times over on the two local TV channels that we talked about. We have a panel of experts here today that will encourage you to educate your family and friends and neighbors, and for you to leave this somewhat as more of an expert than a lot of people in your neighborhood are. We need you to carry out the message. And we're going to get with them real briefly. First of all, we'd like to thank our broadcast sponsors, ServPro of Flagler County, Granny Nannies, Stephen Rende Roofing, and Farm Bureau Insurance of Flagler County. We'd like to thank them for making it possible on our broadcast here today. But mostly, Bright House Networks, our local cable TV company, does such a great job. Let's give them a round of applause. Yeah. And without further ado, let's give the biggest round of applause to the guy we all know and love on TV, giving us the weather every day, Chief Meteorologist, Jeff Day.
Hey. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Hello, and hello. Nice to see you here. And you know what? I'm so happy you're here, because as we move into a tropical season, you know, there was a period of time where we had too many people just not paying close enough attention. I can tell you this now. We've been doing seminars throughout Central Florida, and we go to different communities, and people are much more aware, and that is good, because what has happened in the past is we've gone through periods where there's been minimal activity taking place, and people will say, well, going back to prior to 2004, people would say, well, it was 30 years ago, it's not going to happen again. And then when it did happen in 2004, they said, well, okay, we're set for another 30 years, it's nothing to worry about. That's not the way it works. You always need to be prepared, and that's what we're going to focus on here as we move along through the day today, or through this afternoon, is making sure that you're set for activity that comes into play. And it's not just, you know, it's getting yourself ready so you don't get caught off guard. You do not want to be caught off guard, whether it's any type of activity, but especially in the tropical action that comes into play. How do I set myself up here over to get my show up so I can show some information? Okay. You're going to plug me in? I really appreciate it. It has been a life for me of taking in and learning how to make sure that people stay prepared. Are you ready? That's what I'm going to be focusing on. And notice how I have the R's in quotes. You know, remember learning the 3 R's? The reading, writing, arithmetics? Yeah. Well, the world has changed a little bit since we did that. I want to start out here. Now, this isn't necessarily tropical in nature. What I'm doing is I'm taking you back to north central Wisconsin. Actually going to be going up there in a couple of weeks. Parents own a cabin up there, Sioux Lake, Phillips, Wisconsin. So my daughter's there a couple of years ago, and there's Sioux Lake itself. Absolutely beautiful place. My parents bought that cabin in the fall of '76, and it needed a lot of work. It was run down. It had been built in the 40s. And it needed to be worked over considerably. So spent a lot of time that winter, that early spring, tearing the place apart, basically, putting it back together, tore out the kitchen and tore out the flooring and tried to make it fresh, make it anew. Actually added a screened-in porch because those mosquitoes, you know, talk about Florida mosquitoes. Those things that's like the state bird up in North Wisconsin. I mean, those things are big up there. So they get huge. That's me. Look at that. Yeah. This is July 3rd, 1977. We had just finished the screened-in porch. I have 4 brothers, a sister, and we had worked hard on putting everything together. Screened nice and tight. We'd laid that slab. We'd done it all ourselves, and we finished it July the 3rd. The reason my parents bought that cabin up in North Wisconsin, we had spent years taking off and going, you know, once we take a week out of the summer and we'd go to the resorts and, you know, try to enjoy ourselves. And the parents said, you know what, it'd be nice if we could just settle down. They found a beautiful place with some birch trees. Spectacular. I mean, you look out at that lake and all you can see were the birch trees. Absolutely beautiful. So there you are, July the 3rd, July the 4th. The day started out for us with absolutely beautiful conditions. The lake was smooth as glass, like that picture I had up before. And my brothers and I, well, we'd been working hard all spring, winter and spring. And so we were out there enjoying ourselves on the lake. We were having a great time. We were skiing, we were tubing, having a terrific time. And it got to about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and the clouds started to build. And it started getting a little darker outside. And we thought, well, we'll keep going. We'll be all right. And we look out at the lake, and we start seeing circles all across the lake. Again, smooth as glass, no wind. We started seeing circles all across the lake. What do you think we were seeing? Tornado, water spouts? Nope, just tiny little circles on the top of the water, all the way across the lake. Fish, that's right. You know how fish come up morning and evening especially, come up and try to grab a little bite to eat, right? That's what we kind of figured it was. But this is 2 o'clock in the afternoon. What's going on? And all of a sudden, these fish started coming up more and more. We started seeing these circles all across the lake. And we're like, what? See, my brothers and I, we kind of referred to it as the Dead Sea because we couldn't catch any fish. We didn't think there were any fish out there. Well, they started coming up more and more. Excuse me. And as we looked across the lake, those fish not only came up to the top of the water, but then they started to come out. And not just like tips and, I mean completely rolling out across the water. And we're talking the littlest of the fish up to the biggest of the fish, the muskie, the state fish up in Wisconsin. So, it looked pretty inviting. What did my brothers and I do? Absolutely, go get those fishing poles. We're going to catch us some fish out of that Dead Sea. So we're out on that dock and we're casting away and we're trying to catch those fish, and those fish aren't biting. And we probably would have had better luck if we would have taken a net, stood out the end of the dock and just kind of swept. We probably could have picked something up. We caught nothing. And those fish kept jumping, and they kept jumping. So we're trying and we're trying. The sky is getting darker. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, boom! Sorry about that. You think you jumped. You should have seen us. A massive bolt of lightning came out of the sky, struck right on the opposite side of the lake, blew a birch tree apart. What did my brothers and I do? Drop those fishing poles and run. Absolutely. We run inside that screened-in porch that I showed you a moment ago. And we say, okay, it's going to rain. We're going to let it rain, and then we're going to be all right. The rain will go away. Everything will be fine. We'll go back out to water skiing and tubing. That's where we're having fun anyway. Forget the fish. No big deal. Well, the rain started to fall, and they got heavier and heavier, and then it got hard. The hail started to fall, and it was big-time hail. Now, my parents had built that screened-in porch. They were so proud of how tight that screen was. Absolutely beautiful. The wind started picking up. Ding, ding, ding. Golf ball-sized hail falling from the sky. Literally covered the ground. 2 to 3 inches of hail on the ground. And those winds got stronger. And those birch trees started to sway back and forth. My mom said, I think it's time to go inside. So we go inside, and the birch trees started to fall. And pretty soon, we could hear them falling over the top of the cabin. Now, we had no safe place to go inside a cabin. It was built back in the 40s. Was there a basement? No. Was there a closet or something to go into? No. All we had was a big old oak table in the small kitchenette area that we could try to get 5 boys and a young girl underneath. It was tough to do. But we did our best to get underneath and try to play it safe. And we look outside, and more of those birch trees are falling, and barely see the lake, but we look out and we watch a pontoon fly by the cabin. Pretty intense storm. 43 minutes. My mother timed it. 43 minutes. Winds were estimated to be at the airport in Phillips, Wisconsin, about 10 miles away, at around 110 to 115 miles an hour. That's when the anemometer broke. Actually, later came out with Gus reported estimates. Dr. Fujita, you ever hear of Dr. Fujita? He did the Fujita scale, rating tornadoes. He came out and studied this. He was in Chicago. He came up and studied, and he was estimating wind gusts of 150 to 170. That's pretty intense. Took out thousands of acres of trees, not just the birch, but the beautiful pines and everything, and just basically wiped things out. That's what it looked like when we stepped outside. There used to be a driveway there, and we had no place to go. The cars, by the way, buried underneath. So we were stuck. The thing is, we weren't ready. We weren't ready for this. We had no chainsaw. We had no supplies on hand. The water, the electricity, obviously was gone. It was gone for months, as a matter of fact. And we were stuck. And we learned a valuable lesson. It took us a good week, really, to get out. We had friends come up from 70 miles south with chainsaws and cut their way to us. We could get on the boat and go out to the lake, but as far as trying to get vehicles out and get everybody safe, not so much. It was a very dangerous situation, but we learned a lot from it. And again, the biggest thing is prepare. So when I'm talking about R's, the R's, there's the R I'm talking about. I'm going to put a couple of letters in front of those, like prepare. You want to make sure you are prepared. We here in Florida have all types of different kinds of weather. That's what meteorology is so much fun. And I don't want to say that the wrong way, but there's so many different elements that can come into play around the clock, around the calendar. The tropical action, yes. But we have the thunderstorms. I mean, driving up here this afternoon, I tell you, the lightning was flying. Just last night, I lived down in southwest Orange County. Lightning bolt, I was explaining to somebody, lightning hit not too far away from where I was living, actually busted a gas line. Yeah, busted a gas line and caused some problems with that. You want to make sure you're prepared for all those types of elements, whether it's the thunderstorms in the summertime, cold snaps in the winter that could take out the electricity. You want to make sure you have all your supplies ready, and then especially as we move through the tropical season. Because no one, and I think I could probably get an agreement with these gentlemen, as far as I'm concerned, no one should ever lose their life due to a tropical storm or hurricane, because we know they're coming. Tornadoes can pop quick, right? Lightning bolts can flash. Of course, we want to make sure we're safe. But as far as tropical activity, with the technology we have with us today, we know they're coming. We're not going to be caught off guard by something like that. So if we take the necessary preparations, we're going to be okay. Now, hurricane tracks, month of June. We certainly had an active month of June, didn't we? Yeah. Including here. Oh, yeah. What happened here? We had activity build off to the eastern side of the peninsula, got looped around and came back down. And that can take place quite a bit of times during the month of June, early July, because the wind patterns haven't really set themselves in. So we always watch the Yucatan Channel through the Gulf of Mexico and across the Florida Peninsula, and you get that activity. Remember how they formed, pushed up the coast to South Carolina, and then they dropped back down toward us? And came ashore, delivered some very heavy rain, right? Want to make sure we're very careful of those, especially the flooding concerns. You know, the number one life taker in a tropical system is flooding. That's it. That's the number one. It's not the winds, it's not the heavy, it's not the lightning or anything like that. It's the flooding that occurs. Same thing that happened with Katrina when Katrina moved into Louisiana. Many people lost their lives, but it wasn't when the storm came ashore. It was actually the flooding that followed, and people weren't prepared for that. So you want to make sure, if you're in a flood-prone area, that you are set for that kind of activity. Now, actually, as I'm going to go through here, you see how July actually quiets down a little bit, and it certainly is quiet out there right now, isn't it? We're starting to see a wind pattern change take place right now, and as we warm things up, we move into August and into September. That's where you start seeing activity actually have a little better chance to hold itself together, especially into the western Atlantic and travel across the Caribbean or maybe go along the coast. And there's September. There's your peak of the tropical season. And you want to make sure that you're prepared for those. Typically, that's where you'll see your strongest, more longer duration of a storm as they try to put themselves together. And then as we move into October, it begins to back off. November, it's the tail end of the season, but we can still have things catch us. So we want to make sure we're set for all of those. And again, this is just a chart that shows you how typically it's very quiet to kick in the official season, and then as you move on through that second week of September, actually September the 10th, that is the peak of the tropical season. Now, many have been asking about the El Nino La Nina pattern. We're kind of in between right now, though we could be making a little bit of a shift toward El Nino as we move along here. And what does that mean for us? Well, if we were to get into a La Nina pattern for the tropic season, and I think that's going to maybe develop as we move along in through August, September, it probably may reduce the number of storms that we actually have managed to hold together. Because as they come across the Caribbean, they're going to encounter a lot of wind shear. Winds aloft will come across them and try to tear them apart, but still have the potential for that. This is pretty much how it's been wet and cool, right? Well, actually, we've been dry and warm, right? We're wrapping up what we call the La Nina pattern, and we're going closer to El Nino. But the transition in between the two is something that we may have to make sure that we monitor very carefully, because those storms, when they get developed off to the south of us, remember, in Florida, we can take it from several different directions. It is not very often here in Flagler County that you're going to have a storm move directly ashore from the Atlantic, except in the early part of the season, like we said, where they have the chance to form and just kind of drift about and then get pushed back into the peninsula. But as we move along here, we still have to watch for the activity like this to bow across and come on up from the south and west of us and travel over the peninsula. And even when they do that, like Charlie did, or the other storms in 2004, they can still pack quite a punch. And so we have to make sure we're prepared for all of that when they try to come in our direction. So, are you prepared? We're going to be talking about how to prepare as we move along here through the rest of this session. Now, rare. Like I said, we had gone so many years without any major tropical activity here in Central Florida. How many of you I want to just find out how long you've lived here in Central Florida. 20 years, 30 years, any lifelongers? A couple of lifelongers, okay. When we had the very active, very strong action back in the 60s, and then went so quiet, except for a couple of here and there storms, the transition here into Central Florida changed so much. So many people decided to move to the south. Florida, sunshine, it's going to be terrific. The storms, they don't happen that often. Well, that's because we went through a 30-year lull, if you will. But they can happen. And maybe we're in the midst now of a 30-year spike. Many will agree with that one, where the activity has a chance to go. Dr. Gray, you familiar with Dr. Gray? He's the one that comes out with the hurricane predictions every year. Has anyway for several years. He's starting to back off on that. And I had a chance to talk to Dr. Gray a couple of times. And what he's starting to do is actually let someone else handle the forecasting, because what he wants to focus on is the fact that we have to recognize the patterns that can take place with these storms and how they can play out. And we don't want to just come out and say, well, okay, they're not going to happen for another 30 years. However, what he rules it on is the change in patterns as far as the weather conditions and the ocean temperatures. And he says it's going through a 30-year cycle. He says we have at least another 8 years of this very high tropical development feature trying to come into play. Have to be very close to it, and then it may back off some, but that doesn't mean we do not prepare. We want to make sure we're set. Here's the above normal years. See this? This is from 1959 to 1970, okay? Very active, 24 years. Storms coming across, many of them coming toward the Florida Peninsula, hitting the U.S. Then from 71 to 94, pretty quiet, wasn't it? Now we're kind of back into this type of pattern, where action has picked up considerably for the United States. And here into Central Florida, where the population has changed incredibly, the Florida Peninsula as a whole, we have to make sure that we are set, because many have not grown up with this. Now, the next R on the list is scare. Did I scare you when I boomed before? Did I? Boom! Oh, I love her. Here's the deal. If I were to come out and boom you over and over and over again, it'd be like the little boy who cried wolf. You wouldn't pay attention to it anymore. And that's what I try to fight against. Just like beware, big storm coming, and nothing happens, you don't pay attention to it anymore. And so my fellow Mets at News 13 and the station as a whole, we are very careful to point out that we are not there to scare. We are not there to do the beware. Instead, we make you aware of what's happening. That's our number one goal, because again, I don't want to scare. That does no good whatsoever. But if you're aware of what's happening, what could take place, you can take the steps necessary to make sure you're prepared for them, okay? Have those supply kits that we're going to talk about. Have all those supply kits on hand. And you know what? If a storm forms and it doesn't come at you, so you've got a couple of gallons of water sitting at home. Actually, more than a couple, I hope. I mean, at my house, we have cases of bottled water. Guess what? It tastes pretty good. We drink them. And we go out and buy some more. We have some canned goods sitting as a standby. We have all the supplies, and they come in handy not just for the tropical season, but if the middle of the summer or this early spring tornadoes outbreak comes into play and power gets knocked out, if you don't have those supplies on hand, you're going to get stuck. And you want to make sure you're ready for that. So it's good to have those kits in place and make sure not only that you are aware, that you are prepared, and that you share, another R, you share the information that you're picking up here today with others around you so that they do the same thing. Because again, you do not want to be caught off guard, especially with the tropical feature. No one should be caught off guard. You want to make sure you take the steps necessary. If you live in a flood-prone area and expect to see a lot of rain, you want to make sure that you have the steps necessary to get away so you're not stuck in it, okay? But you share that information with others so that they can get caught up on what's going to take place too. Now, I just wanted to show you this. Sharing is not just amongst ourselves, but like sharing like this, for instance, with the National Weather Service. You guys familiar with this, I bet. This is the National Weather Service chat room. Technology has come a long way, hasn't it? How many of you have iPhones? Okay, or a computer at home? Yeah, see, there you go. The information is always instant. It is there all the time. Another reason why no one should lose their lives because of something like this, as long as they take the steps that are necessary. But what we have here, we have a chat room that opens up with the National Weather Service. Emergency management officials can get in, local governments, and the meteorologists in town, and we can go back and forth and just update people on what's happening. And it's so informative, and there's just so much information. My daughters will say, I have twins, 15 years old, help me. But they're like, Dad, how did you ever get by without these? Well, we made it. We did it. But there's just so much information out there that we can stay up to date and make sure that we try to stay here safe. So being ready is what it's all about. And if we stay with the list of R's that I gave you, prepare, to share, those types of elements, and not scare or aware, or I should be aware, but scare or beware, you want to stay away from those, but just make sure you're aware of what can take place here in Flagler County and across Central Florida. And that's what we're going to continue to focus on now as we move along, okay? You are great. We're going to continue to talk. I'll answer any of your questions that you have, but we have to move on to this young gentleman over here. He's a fine-looking guy. Who's first? No, I think Tony's up next, or Troy's up next. Troy, tell us about what kind of work you need to do to make sure that people are prepared and safe and ready to go.
Absolutely. Round of applause for Jeff Day.
Hey, thank you. Do you want the mic? Oh, okay. Let me get my mic. Oh, there you go.
Can you hear me back there? We're on.
There
One,
you
two.
go.
Okay. We just got to change presentations real quick, and then we'll get underway. I want to take one moment before I formally introduce myself. I want to thank Jeff and his team. I've lived in Flagler County for 30 years, and the news media that we get from a lot of the outlying stations, because we are so far away, sometimes doesn't focus. And some of the stations, when you look at the map of East Central Florida, their logo's right over Flagler County. And you're trying to peek around it to see if it's raining here. I want to thank Jeff for all his great work in bringing Flagler County to the television and providing us real-time, good information. We appreciate that. Thank you, sir. For those who don't know me, my name's Troy Harper. I'm the Emergency Management Division Chief for Flagler County. And for those who do know me, you know I like to walk around the room. And they tried to tether me to this, and I said, that's not going to happen. I've got to work the room with my people here. So I appreciate y'all coming out and taking time out of your day to just learn a little bit of information. Some you may know, and some you may have forgotten, and some new stuff that we may teach you. What is emergency management? Well, we are a county department that is responsible for coordinating response, recovery, preparedness, and mitigation for large-scale disasters. Floods, fires, earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, those types of events. And we do this through plans. And our plans, we have to incorporate all county, city, federal, and non-governmental agencies. Well, day to day, a lot of those folks don't work together on the grand scale that a disaster may bring. So our job is to write the plans, conduct the exercises, bring everyone to the table, and say, this is how we're going to do it. Think of it as this. Think of it as an air traffic controller. My staff may not know how to fly the airplanes. They may not know where the baggage is loaded. They may not even know the ways around the airport. But they make sure that those folks that are in charge of each of those know exactly what they're doing so that everything's in harmony, almost like the conductor of a symphony. Now, a lot of you haven't seen me. As Jeff said, we haven't had a lot of hurricane activity in Flagler County. Or have we? First, I want to show you where our facility is. How many folks have been to the facility in Bunnell? Great. Those who didn't raise your hand, I'm going to mention this 2 or 3 times. In the back of the room, there's a flyer. I want you to pick up that flyer. Jennifer's holding a copy up here. In about 3 weeks, we're going to be having our Hurricane Expo there as well. And a lot of the same sponsors and folks you see will be at that as well. Our keynote speaker is going to be Chief Meteorologist from the National Weather Service in Jacksonville, Steve Littrow. And for those who haven't seen Steve speak, Jeff Day is very calm compared to this guy. Very calm. So come out and see us. Yeah, and you'll enjoy it. We're going to have great family activities there, a kids area, all kinds of expos and exhibits for you to come see some local vendors. So join us on July 28th. The date's on the flyer. So this is the Emergency Operations Center. This is a hardened facility that we built back in 2006. And I'm glad we built it when we did because we probably wouldn't have the money to duplicate it right now. And we actually got a lot of, it was very cheap to build per square footage compared to building it today. We were able to lock in our construction costs. Debris doors on the front actually close up to prevent windborne debris from flying around and impeding on the windows. We've got large training rooms there that we didn't have prior to this building. We could get maybe 20 people at a time to do different trainings. We've got 2 of these large rooms now. Our lobby, although there's a lot of glass there, there's very minimal glass in the remainder of this building. Of course, our reception area where folks are greeted. Commercial grade kitchen that we have there, that we can feed between 200 and 500 people per serving out of this kitchen, the folks that come to this center. And again, they're from all over, city, county, state, federal. Our non-governmental folks will come, we'll feed them while they're there. In 2004, I spent 6 weeks in the EOC. I think I made it home 3 different days from Charlie, Francis, and Jean. So we were at the EOC a lot. Of course, we have to sleep there too, so we've got sleeping quarters with these very unique bunks that fold out of the wall that we can use this as operational space day to day. That's what you need for your twins. That'd be perfect. And of course, our partner and friends, WNZF News Radio, 1550 AM and 106.3 FM, they staff our broadcast booth during disasters, reporting live information to you as it happens from the officials, from the folks that need to get you the information right out of the center. And that's a great partnership we have. We're blessed to have great partnership with all the radio stations. We have a television studio there as well where we can go on and do media briefings. We can do over the channels you're watching us or hearing us on. Same folks, you're going to see us in the EOC during a disaster. So Palm Coast has come a long way. Folks, the room we're sitting in 1985, I sat in the back in a technical aspect doing a telethon. And we thought it in 1985 in this same room. And we thought it, when we had phones here, and we thought it was such a big deal that we were able to broadcast in 1985 the signal from here to about 12,000 Palm Coast residents. We thought that was high tech. We've come a long way. If you dial 911 in Flagler County, that'll ring at the Sheriff's Communications Center in the Emergency Operations Center. Whether you need police, fire, medical, one center saves a lot of money by having one center for all services. And then the operations room. This is where it all happens. This is what looks like NASA. This is the grand room where all the decision makers come and they occupy these seats and these computers. Now you notice there's a lot of television screens in there. It's all about information and sharing information with everybody that's in the room simultaneously, real time, in front of everyone. So Jeff talked about hurricanes, talked about the 30-year law. By the way, What he didn't tell you is Dr. Gray's probably 85 now, 85, 86. He's nutty. He's wacky. No, he's actually a great guy, and the technology and the research that he's done over his lifetime and his dedication to tropical weather is impeccable. It has really changed how we think and do things. But we have had hurricanes in Flagler County. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you all some maps, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the tropical systems that have passed near or over Flagler County. We've gone all the way back to 1950. How many folks were here in 1950? Nope. What was the population in 1950, Flagler County? 12, 13 people? Maybe a dozen dolphins or so, right? Careful. Sorry. Mike's going to show his age. Category 3 at its peak, but that wasn't here. It actually passed just northwest of Flagler County, but brought a lot of rain to Flagler County. There's some pictures in the Historical Museum down in Flagler Beach of a canoe going in front of the old courthouse. That was from Hurricane King. A few weeks later, Hurricane Easy passed just west of us. Again, put us on the east side of the storm, brought us a lot of rain, a lot of tropical weather, some winds. But again, Category 3, not here, way out in the ocean. And then we go to Donna in 1960. Those are the ones that worry me. Those long-lived, right off the coast of Africa, just started. They're like a train. They just keep building. And you notice the colors just keep getting, until it peaks out, makes this little turn back. But look at that storm. Could you imagine that today? Miami, Tampa, Orlando, Jacksonville. All in the, yeah, those are actually advisories, I believe. It's from 29th of August through 14th of September. Imagine that, 2+ weeks watching the storm come and then pass by. But those are actually a little easier to predict when they're larger and they're stable and they just keep moving. So small erratic ones, especially these tropical storms that just sit and stall, that you don't have, it's really difficult to predict those. Cleo in 1964, right up the entire east coast of Florida, impacting Flagler County. Cat 5, but that was way down here, way down to South Dominican there. Dora, 1964, another one of those long-lived. Now, Jeff said that storms don't usually come straight at the coast here in the northeast part of Florida, and he's absolutely right. But we've had 2 of them in the 60s that did it, and it was the weather pattern. They were 4 years apart. It was that pattern that we were stuck in, where it brought them in, turned them up, and then you had that opposition to the north. Think of these storms, they're just being steered around. It's like walking through a crowded room. The big guy usually gets the way through, right? Think of it as that. Category 4 at the peak for Dora. Probably some of the worst damage we've had in Flagler County was from Dora in '64. Made landfall, I believe, somewhere around St. Augustine, Ponte Vedra Beach. Gladys in 1968. Now, Gladys has that Charlie look to her. Comes up into the Gulf, makes a right-hand turn. You remember the meteorologist? There's nothing against Jeff or anybody, but the meteorologists all said Charlie made a right-hand turn at the last minute. No, it didn't. Mother Nature had that path intended all along. The reality is the multi-millions of dollars of equipment, technology, aircraft, satellites, all the things we have out there, these guys will never be perfect. Never be perfect. He's close. He is really close. Tom Terry's going to call me. I just know it. But what I'm saying is don't focus on that center line. That center line is just the pinpointed center of circulation. You may have a 30, 50, 70, 100-mile wide eye on that, on some of the monsters. David in 1979. Just a little trivia for you. That actually interrupted the filming of Caddyshack down in Davie, Florida. Just a little, don't ask me why I know that. Category, it was on Biography or A&E. There was it peaked out here, but again, up the entire east coast of Florida. Actually did more damage in the northeast with flooding in Pennsylvania and New York. You heard of the Johnstown flood? Happened in '79. Elena in 1985. Now, Elena didn't get very close to us, but she had some far-reaching bands. We had some power outages, things like that. 1985. Sound familiar? Had bad wildfires that year as well. Right here in Palm Coast in Flagler County. So we had a tropical system that dropped a lot of rain on us, and we had fires. The shift between El Nino and La Nina can sometimes take weeks, sometimes take months. And back in 1998, we saw that shift again in a very short period of time. We were flooded in February of '98. In June, July, we were on fire. That's Mother Nature. That's the power of her. Man will never duplicate the energy in these large hurricanes. not with any of the atom or hydrogen or any of those bombs that we have, nothing nuclear. They're immensely powerful. Aaron in 1995 made landfall about Indian River County as a small tropical storm. But again, we're on that northeast corner. We're starting to get those battering winds, some beach erosion, power outages, things like that. And then Floyd in 1999. Oh, yeah. How many folks were here for Floyd? That's what worries me. Floyd was the monster. I tell folks that Floyd was the Katrina that we missed by 70 miles. 70 miles offshore, Floyd passed. I was in the Emergency Operations Center when that storm was just here off the tip of Miami, before it had made its turn. And the governor on a conference call and the state meteorologists were concerned that we hadn't gotten everybody off the coast that we needed to, that there wasn't. The governor asked about 1 million people to leave eastern part of Florida. 2.2 million tried to leave the state. Didn't work. Our roadway networks didn't handle it then. They wouldn't handle that today. But I'm going to talk a little bit more about Floyd in just a second. Irene in 1999. Just a few weeks after Floyd. Now, I'm going to back my slide up because I said Floyd was a Cat 4, 70 miles offshore. A few weeks later, Irene comes by as a Cat 2, half the size, half the intensity, twice as close, 40 miles offshore, did twice as much damage. It's that close. Don't get caught up in the numbers, folks. Just realize that if you're in that path, it could happen. And if it's not going to be from the winds and the rainfall and the surge and all those things, it may be from the tornadoes that are embedded in the bands. You look at the flooding that's going on. We're on conference calls almost every day with the state due to this recent flooding that we had from Debbie. There are still homes underwater up in Live Oak. There's still areas over there completely flooded. We'll get to questions afterwards, sir. I'm sorry. So this was in 1999. 98, we were on fire. 99, we're flooding. And then the 2004 season, Charlie, Francis, Gene. I don't know who lives down here in Polk County near Bartow, where all three passed, but boy, Mother Nature does not like them. That's an anomaly. Actually, you know what the anomaly was? The next year, 05. They ran out of hurricane names. They had to revert back to the Greek alphabet. I think, what do we have, 29 or 31 named storms that year? Not a bad time to live in Northeast Florida, though. Not a whole lot there. Then Faye, Tropical Storm Faye actually stalled right over Flagler County for about 2 days. Most of us really didn't know it because we got 3 inches of rain. Jacksonville got 30 inches. Brevard got 30 inches. I referred to this as Tropical Donut Faye because it had a 50-mile eye wall and just sat right over top of us. But we got lucky on Faye. Folks, it only takes one. And Jeff Day said it best. Dr. Gray, in his infinite wisdom out of Colorado State University, and his team put their predictions out every year. There's going to be 12 named storms. There's going to be 8 named storms. Whatever the numbers are, I don't pay attention to them because it only takes one. And if that one storm hits Flagler County this year, those predictions don't mean a thing. And the fact is we've got a lot of complacency. And folks need to be aware that this is a threat. It's days like today, beautiful days like today, that we tolerate this threat, but you've got to have some preparedness. Now, I talked about Floyd. I'm going to talk about Andrew real quick. In 1992, Andrew slammed into the southern tip of Florida. Do you think the folks in Florida City and in Homestead cared that Dr. Gray had predicted 12 named storms that year? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. When Andrew made landfall, about 120 miles across, left to right, from the outer wind bands, east to west. That's about the width of the state here, from here over towards Cedar Key. When Floyd was just off of our coast, and these are to scale, was over 400 miles across. Almost 4 times the size. Cat 5, Cat 4. Right? Which one do you want? Neither. But do we really have a choice? No. No, we're just a spot on the bullseye, spot on the dartboard, and all we can hope is that Mother Nature has bad aim. So in Flagler County, during an Atlantic landfalling hurricane evacuation, everybody who lives east of I-95 is potentially in an evacuation zone. Let me say it again. If you live east of I-95, you are potentially in an Atlantic landfalling hurricane evacuation zone. For those storms that come from the west, like the Charlies and some of those tropical storms, we may not have to evacuate those folks. We may go into more of a flooding evacuation, low-lying areas, flood-prone areas, places that we know that flood. Now, why do we evacuate folks from those areas? Storm surge, absolutely. Some fancy maps here, and by the way, these are in our disaster preparedness guide. The evacuation zones are in the disaster preparedness guide. It's in the back of the room. They're available at City Hall, government buildings, here at the community center in Palm Coast. This fancy data over here tells us where the water will surge from the ocean as the hurricane makes landfall. Worst case for Flagler County is a Category 5 making landfall somewhere south of us, somewhere between Daytona, say Ormond by the Sea, puts us right on that northern eye wall, 20 to 30 miles out from the center of circulation. This is where, and Jeff gave you a boom. I'm not going to scare you, but you may run out of here after now. I'm not, just kidding. Worst case scenario, Flagler County is about 25 feet of ocean water covering Flagler Beach. Think about that, folks. Go to the top of the Flagler Beach Bridge. You drove there going to the fireworks, right? You look down over that beautiful little sleepy seaside community, and the only thing sticking out of the water is the top of the leaky condos and then the top of the Catholic Church. Almost everything else is completely under ocean water. That's Cat 5. That's the power of Mother Nature. That's Katrina stuff. Do you think the folks, how many of y'all have heard about Waveland, Mississippi? Look at that. Not, okay, Ron, you don't count. You're smarter than the average person. Waveland, Mississippi, and past Christiana is where Katrina made landfall. Nobody heard about it. Waveland, Mississippi lost 80% of their structures. Almost 100% of all their government-built vehicles were destroyed or flooded. They had storm surge 12 feet deep, almost 18 miles inland. Think about that, 18 miles inland. Now, our shelf, our continental shelf off of here is different than they have there. So we have a different surge. Our surge comes up and goes down. What we expect in the worst case. Now, that's worst case, folks. I'm throwing the Spielberg stuff at you, the perfect storm. But we may even have to evacuate everybody east of the Intracoastal, potentially in a Category 1, 2, maybe even a tropical storm that has the potential of growing. This over here is just a lot of hodgepodge of that data that I'm going to talk about just in a second. So know what evacuation zone you're in. We're going to announce evacuations, God forbid we ever need them, by zone. And if you need help figuring out where you're at, give us a call and we'll tell you. I don't like that slide. I like this slide better. So what is storm surge? Just prior to the landfall of the center of the eye, you get this mound of water that comes ashore. Well, why? Well, hurricanes are low-pressure systems, right? You ever been in the pool or the tub and you swung your arms out like this and the water kind of, that wave action in front of the storm? That's part of what adds to storm surge. So what happens in Flagler County when that surge comes over the dunes at the beach? Well, if you've driven up A1A, you know that there's some very high dunes here. Unlike Fort Lauderdale, where you drive down A1A and you can look out and you feel like the ocean's right with you. It's parallel to you. It's the same altitude. Once that water comes over our 6, 8, 10, 12-foot dune lines, it can't go back the way it came. It goes to the lowest point, which is the Intracoastal. So all that water that comes ashore is going to go into the Intracoastal, into that basin, and it's going to flood those swamps. And now it's got to eventually go out. It's not all going to percolate into the ground. It's got to run back out to the ocean. Where's it going to go? Matanzas Inlet and Ponce Inlet, which means that's the slow way out. So we could have some severe flooding in a major storm. Now, who wants to stay here? Who wants to be flooded for weeks on end with no electricity? But I've got an 86-year-old woman down at Flagler Beach, refuses to evacuate, said she's lived there all her life, she's not leaving. Not very smart, folks. These things are not survivable. And as Jeff said, those folks, no reason somebody should be killed by a tropical system. Because honestly, they're like slow-moving trains. You see it coming, step out of the way, get off the tracks. So we've done a lot of technology updates, some neat stuff that we've done with the entire state, a grant that we got. This is laser data that was shot from an airplane down and gives us a 3D model of all the ground cover, including trees, shrubs, buildings, etc. And we run a hydrology model over that to see where the rain or the water, where the storm surge is going to flow. And that's how we ended up with the storm surge maps. And this is actually being updated right now for a second time. We're going to have some new slosh model here in just a couple weeks where we can see where's that water going to go. We also did in the last few years a behavioral analysis. What do people in Florida do? Called over 400,000 people in the state of Florida. We didn't, the state did, to ask them, what do you do? Do you know what evacuation zone you live in? It'd be nice to know what the general population thinks they're going to do based on different scenarios. That way we can get an idea how many folks are going to evacuate a few miles, 10 miles, 100 miles, leave the state, or not evacuate at all. Then we can plan to how many we're going to need for sheltering. And these are all just rough numbers because you know when it's panic time, when you see Jeff without his tie and his short sleeve shirt on, he's working 15-hour shifts, right? That's not funny. That's when it starts to get, people start to change their thought a little bit, their theory. We also did an evacuation, transportation analysis. Those who tried to evacuate here in 1999 for Floyd, knows that it took 6 hours to get from the center of Palm Coast to anywhere near a county line. Any direction. Any direction. And again, too many people tried to evacuate simultaneously. Some of them didn't have to evacuate right away. If we can, we'll do staggered evacuations. Chief Beadle and I were both here in 1998 when the wildfire evacuation was issued. And they said, everybody out of the pool, evacuate Flagler County. Not a smart thing to do, folks. I think we had 30,000 people here then. 32,000 people. We've tripled in size. But we haven't tripled our roadway networks, have we? That should have been a staggered evacuation. And those are lessons learned that we're going to keep growing and becoming better and better on. Part of this evacuation was that we're not the only ones leaving. If Brevard decides to evacuate, Volusia's going to try to beat them out, and then Flagler's going to try to get our folks out. So there's components there that we've got to take serious consideration under. Who's evacuating and where are they going? Just helps us make better decisions. All this technology really has come full circle in emergency management. It's not the days of the old civil defense and the Cuban Missile Crisis with little crank radios and things. A lot of technology goes into these. So how do you stay informed during a disaster? FlaglerEmergency.com is our website. It's always updated. Every day it's updated. There's new information. You can get wildfire information, hurricane, flood, fire, everything I've talked about here today. Everything that's in our disaster guide is available right there on Flagler Emergency. Weather alert radio. It has gone off quite a bit lately. That's a good thing. How many of you do have a weather alert radio in your home? Okay, keep your hands up. How many of them are plugged in? Very good. That's a good start. You got to have them plugged in. The battery only works for so long. Folks, do yourself a favor. $29. You can run down to one of the local stores here. I can't say who they are, but they got a green P as a logo. $29. You pick this thing up. Did y'all get that? Okay. 29 bucks. You plug it in. You wonder why you bought it. Doesn't pay any of your favorite music, right? You push the button, and the guy's voice tells you what the weather was today. Well, I was outside. I know what it was today. And at one time, at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're sleeping, and this thing starts screaming like a cat with his tail caught in a sliding glass door. You come flying out of bed. You hit the button. It says there's a tornado warning for your area. Tornado was spotted on the ground northeast of Bunnell, moving northeast at 25 miles an hour. Residents in Cypress Knoll, Grand Haven, and they'll start telling you areas, Palm Coast, should seek immediate shelter now. Go to the lowest floor of your structure, an interior room with no windows. Folks, for 29 bucks, who's going to wake you up at 3 in the morning and save your life? Please, those are lifesavers. Of course, our friends at WNZF News Radio have been great partners in helping us get information out, and as I said, they will be in the Emergency Operations Center during an activation. Code Red. How many are signed up for Code Red? So when your weather alert radio goes off, your telephone rings. Because what happens if you're not home? It'll call you on your cell phone, tell you about severe weather. We almost had to launch a Code Red call just 2 nights ago for a missing child. We can use it for those things as well. We've used Code Red for bank robberies for the sheriff's office. Somebody robbed a bank, ran into the Boulder Rock area. We called everybody in that immediate area and said, stay inside, lock your doors, make sure your car's locked, garage door's down, and don't answer your door. Free. Sign up at either FlaglerEmergency.com or at the City of Palm Coast website as well. And all this information, again, is in the disaster guides, which is right there. Brand new guide just came out. It's a cooperative effort between Palm Coast and the Flagler County, and it saves you a lot of tax dollars by sharing local information by local emergency officials just for the local residents. And of course, our sponsors, Bright House, WNZF, FPL, Granny Nannies, and all the WNZF radio stations, Easy 101 point, help me out guys, 100.9, and Beach FM at 92.7. So the question is, you going to evacuate or stay? No. That's, yeah, that was after the fireworks in Flagler Beach the other night. Or is that Town Center? Town Center?
It was Town Center, too.
This is I-45 outside of Dallas, Texas for Hurricane Rita. This is like a Where's Waldo for me. Every time I look at it, I see something different. But this is what you call contraflow. Now, this is not applicable in this part of the state of Florida, but I want you to be aware, if you're planning to leave the area, you may run into some of this, especially if you're going north and west on I-10. This is applicable down on I-95 out of South Florida, for obvious reasons, on I-4 out of Tampa, and then on I-10 west of Jacksonville. Now, depending on which lane you're in, if you're going over I-10, will determine whether you're going to Savannah or whether you're going to Tallahassee. Because, yeah, you can't, once you're going, they split the lane. They say this half's going that way and this half's going that way. So keep that in mind if you're going to be evacuating. But when you look at the photo, there's an ambulance over here. We're not sure if there's an accident. There's police cars in here. The amount of staffing from emergency services it takes to do contraflow is immense. And what if the storm picks up speed? This is a last-ditch effort to get people out. This is not where you want to be in an evacuation. If you're in a sturdy home, let's say less than 12 years old, and you're outside of that storm surge area, and you've got some window protection, you might want to consider staying home. I can't make that determination from you. I'm not a building contractor. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a meteorologist. I'm really not even a very bright guy. But I can't tell you whether you'd stay or not. But think about it. If you stayed home in the place where you got your groceries and your ATM and your gas was destroyed, could you survive? If you couldn't leave your home for a couple days, maybe even weeks on end, could you survive? No? You got enough stuff there? No electricity, 90 degrees? Make sure you have a plan, folks. And don't just think that you have a plan. If you don't have some things written down, some checklists, you don't have a plan. I'll give you a little exercise at the end. Let me back up, because we don't just do hurricanes, we do flood, fires, earthquakes, terrorism, beetle infestations, lightning, flooding, you name it. That's our expertise, is to plan for those type of events. We'll talk about two programs we have real quick. CERT, Community Emergency Response Teams. If you're interested in joining CERT, you can get our guide, give us a call, check our website. CERT is volunteers within a community. We've got one here in Grand Haven. In Cypress Knoll, there's a CERT team. Actually, throughout Palm Coast, there's various CERT teams. We come in, we train these folks, we give them the tools to do the job. It's all FEMA sponsored, it's Department of Homeland Security funded. We train these teams in disaster response and recovery, the basic stuff, basic firefighting. Now, Chief, I know he's looking at me, don't want you running out trying to fight wildfires. But if they're completely overwhelmed after a tornado or a hurricane, this will help you help yourself and your neighbors. And if you're interested in seeing if there's a team nearby, give us a call. The other volunteer opportunity we have for you to give some back is Flagler Emergency Management Volunteer, FEMV. And there's a couple members here. These folks do everything in the EOC, from cooking to helping us with distribution centers, checking people in, you name it. We never have enough hands. There's 12 and a half people that work in the Emergency Operations Center day to day. That includes fire administration, 911. It's not enough folks. I can't do it without volunteers. So I count on you, and I appreciate those folks that do come out and help us. So get a plan. You got these things in your house: batteries, water, medications, non-perishable foods. How about a roadmap to where you're going to go so you can have alternate routes? You may have driven to Aunt Mary's house 100 times in Tallahassee, but if you can't go that route, do you know an alternate route? Make sure you have a map with you. Think of those things that you wouldn't normally think of. So I'm going to give you a quick exercise. If you don't have a plan, I challenge you to do this in the next 2 or 3 days. Get a piece of paper and a pencil, set your oven or microwave timer to 15 minutes, and make a list of everything you would take with you if you were leaving your home for the last time, never to return. When the 15 minutes is up, stop writing. Now scratch everything off that list that doesn't fit in your car. I've been through that right here in Flagler County in 1985 and then again in 1998. Folks, it happens. Start that list in the next few days. Now you've started that list. What do you need? What is really important to you? And you know it'll fit in your car. Start finding ways to consolidate. Put those things into bins and things totes you can just grab and go. That's what's important. Because in a panic moment, you're not going to get everything. You are not going to get everything. Okay, a few minutes for questions before we move on to the next speaker, and I will be here after the event. So we're going to bring Lisa around with her microphone. She's got her best Bob Barker microphone here. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to ask, that last storm, the one in 99, was there any major flooding in this section we're in right now?
Right here, no. Remember, both in 1999, Irene and Floyd both stayed offshore. We had flooding. It was mainly rainfall flooding. No surge broke over the dunes in either of those storms. And we know the areas that flood in Palm Coast. If you haven't, give it another month or two till we start getting those competitive, constant afternoon showers.
Last one, that was 95 that came up here.
99.
I had some shingles on my roof that were replaced.
Yeah, we had a lot of wind damage, trees down, power lines down from Floyd and Irene.
Section,
Oh yeah, that was absolutely. But that was in '99 from Floyd and Irene, so that's going to happen. You're going to see those things happen. So, anything else?
That's it.
Thank you. Anybody else have a question? Okay, folks, one more time, remember to pick up a disaster guide in the back of the room. I'm going to turn it over to Chief Mike Beadle from Palm Coast. Mike and I have worked together for, well, we won't tell you how many years, a very long time, and it's a great working relationship, and we're here regardless of whether you're a city or a county resident or even a visitor. So, Chief?
Now I got to play nice. Yeah, Troy and I have been around the block a few times, as they say, and I'll suck up to Jeff too. Is I was telling him in my office, in our station acts as the emergency operations center for the city of Palm Coast. We have his smiling face on every day because, as Troy said and Jeff said, it's a weather event. We also look at fire events and all those other things that you're seeing on TV. Now, Troy was real nice in giving you 15 minutes to write things down, right? I give you 5. And my little test is go into your house when you get home tonight, time it. You have 5 minutes to walk in your front door, pick up whatever it is you want to take with you, whatever it is, and leave. Not 15, because on the fire side of things, you have 5. Okay? We did it last year down in Seminole Woods a few times. We thought we were headed that way this year. Okay? So you have 5 minutes to get out of your house. It's a lot less time than 15. Now, I say that because, and I was going to have you put one of the pictures up. I think it might have been Jeff's. But you see this devastation. And right now you're seeing it in Colorado. And watch the evening news, and they're going to go back into the neighborhoods where they've lost hundreds and hundreds of homes. We in Palm Coast lost 131 in 1985. We lost 67 in 1998. It's funny how we remember those things. Because we're the people that are supposed to be protecting that. And Mother Nature said, it's not going to work out that way. But in any event, and they're going to do it in Colorado, they're going to show one of the women that lived in this neighborhood, and they're going to zoom in on her, and they're going to talk about, and there's nothing left in the devastation, and that this woman is standing in her home. And she's going to have in her hand some kind of a sifting device. You use them for sifting flour. I don't cook, so somebody help me out. You sift flour with them, right? Okay. And she's going to be crouched down, and they're going to zoom right in on her. And you're just going to kind of look and figure out, and I'm going to tell you where she's standing. She's standing in what once was her bedroom. Okay? So what is she looking for? Her jewelry. Because she said, well, if I walked in the house, and I walked down here, and I turned down here, and now I'm in my bedroom, my dresser used to be right here, and the jewelry box that I used to have all my prized possessions in is that pile right there, right? And they're going to watch her for a minute. She's going to be crying because, ladies, I'm here to tell you, and gentlemen, you're not going to find your jewelry in that fire. It's gone. Unless you have a perfect something, and I don't know if any of us have a perfect diamond or emerald or ruby or whatever is out there, okay? So this poor woman is looking for her grandmom's engagement ring that was 100 years old, and it's gone. Now, I tell you that side of the story in that we have time. I couldn't agree with the statement. We should not have anybody get hurt or killed because of and I like to say anything. With today's technology, whether it be a fire or whether it be a hurricane, tornadoes are different animals, we have time to take care of what's important to us. Now, I used to carry in the back of my chief mobile, as I call it, my work truck, a briefcase. And in that briefcase is birth certificates, insurance policies, pictures of my house, CD of everything that's important to me in my house. Little side note, if you go to insurance and say, hey, by the way, the house got wrecked because of the flood, the tornado, whatever it was, but I just bought a 600-inch plasma TV that took the whole, right? Okay? First thing he's going to say is, prove it. Well, I don't have a receipt. See, the kids gave it to us for our anniversary about 5 years ago, and I don't have anything. Okay? If anybody, and he asked, who has these? I got more pictures on this thing of important things, including my family. Okay? You got to take pictures. You got to prove that you had that plasma TV. You need to take time. You got to be prepared. I can't agree. You know, any Boy Scouts in here? okay? Be prepared. You got to be prepared. So in our world, we serve as both emergency managers and firefighters. So Monday to Friday we do fires, and then and speaking of when is hurricane season? Since we're talking about hurricanes, what are the dates? June 1st, July 30th. Okay. When's fire season? What's fire season? January 1st to December 31st. And in our world, we like to say, yeah, and then throw in a hurricane season in the middle of it, okay? So being prepared, know what's going on. And again, TVs, phones, code red, we have code red. We serve as the emergency management, and I like to give an overview of how this is going to work. We're a city within a county, within a state, within a region, within blah, blah, blah. So how the whole thing gets tied together in an event, be it a fire, be it a hurricane, be it a tornado, is, if I can get my numbers right, we have 67 counties in the state of Florida and 457-ish municipalities, okay? So I am one of 457 fire chiefs. Troy happens to be one of 67 county emergency managers. State says we have to have a county emergency manager. That would be Troy. You want to take a pow? Just come. Okay. So think of it this way. Whether it be fire, whether it be hurricane, I need in the city of Palm Coast, because I'm charged with that. Let's say I need 5 fire engines to protect structures for wildfire. Well, the way the system is designed, I actually have to call Troy. And I have to say to Troy, I need 5 fire trucks. And Troy says, okay, stand by. Troy calls our regional coordinator in Jacksonville, who calls Tallahassee. And you think, man, there's a lot of red tape involved with this. Reality of it is, within probably 20 minutes, maybe a half an hour, Troy's going to call me back and say, your 5 fire trucks have been ordered. They'll be here or at least on the road in 2 hours. How do I know that? We do it all the time. Right now, we are actually, all the firefighters in Flagler County were on standby to go to Colorado. Now, will we go? Probably not. Probably not. But because of the devastation out there, through the regional, through the state compacts, through all these mutual aid agreements we have all over the place, we already know that when they get hit on the other side of the country, where are they going to get the resources? On the East Coast. Last year, we were slated, as we're the county, we were going to put 2 fire trucks on flatbeds. They were going to be railroaded out west someplace, and our guys were going to be flown out there and go to work for 21 days. That's the type of system we're involved with. So here in Palm Coast, when we need it, I called Troy. If 457 fire chiefs in the state of Florida called Tallahassee to get a fire, just get 1 fire truck, do you think it would work? It doesn't work real well. So that's how the system's designed to go high. Now, everybody's been talking to you about evacuations. How many of you actually have an evacuation plan in place? It's what we were afraid of. Remember that 5 minutes I gave you to leave? Okay. Well, it's really super important because a couple of things are going to happen. Number one, you're going to have to leave, and we saw the gridlock coming out of Flagler Beach and the fireworks the other night. And by the way, they got that down to a science pretty good, okay? Daytona Beach, did anybody go to the races this weekend? Okay, right? How long did it take you to get out of the track and get home? 2 hours. Okay, you went the wrong way. Talk to me after. Get you out in about 15 minutes. I've actually gone from the track and been home here in Palm Coast 37 minutes. Okay? They've got it down to a science. It depends on where you're at and how you're going in. And the point of this is you may not be able to come out and turn left on ISB. You might have to go right and go to the beach and come up A1A to get back into Flagler, which is the smartest and the quickest way to go. You're going to have a plan. You got to know where you're going. 1998 wildfires. How many of you were here for that lovely weekend we had? Okay. Yeah, well, it was a bad weekend, but yeah, it was 66 days of firefighting in 1998. I remember my father calling me, may he rest in peace, and he said, hey, what's going on? I said, Dad, I love you to death. Go get in the car, take Mom, and leave. That's what I heard. Dad, yeah? Are you there? Yeah. Get Mom in the car and leave. And that's what he said to me. Where Where am I going to go? I said, I don't care where you're going to go, but I know where you can't stay. It took them 4 hours to get to Ocala. Okay? 4 hours. How long does it take you to get to Ocala on a good day? Yeah, an hour, 45 minutes, depends. Okay. First got out of the plan. The second thing is everybody that doesn't live here, okay, all our kids, all our aunts and uncles, all the family are someplace else. And what are they going to do? They're going to call you, right? Are you okay? They're not going to get you. Okay? There's only so many of these things that'll ring at the same time. So here's another little tidbit for you. Call a relative that lives on the other side of the world someplace. Palatka, Texas. You guys are slow. You're slow. Okay, California, Arizona, even New York. Anybody from New York? Yeah, all you New Yorkers, right? Right? Oh, I can't. What's at the corner of Stillman and Surf Avenue, Brooklyn, New York? Who said Nathan's? There you go, Nathan's, right? Okay, a little trivia. Had to watch the hot dog eating contest. Okay, so call New York and tell Uncle Vinny. Say, yo, Vinny, listen. Give him all your information and tell him if there's an event, hurricane, wildfire, or something, because they're going to see it long before you're going to see it. Jeff's going to be on TV, and you're not going to be watching it because you're going to be leaving. And he's going to be saying, okay, we just evacuated, or people are leaving, or whatever's going to happen. Tell Uncle Vinny where you're going to go. Tell Uncle Vinny you're going to Ocala. And have the rest of the family get Uncle Vinny's phone number. And when they want to find out where you're at, they call Uncle Vinny, because you call Vinny and say, we're going to Ocala, we'll call you when we get there. You're finished with the conversation. Let the family call Uncle Vinny in New York. I talked to them, they're doing fine. They're on their way to their checkpoint, okay? 4 hours later, it might take you longer to call Vinny, and tell him, we made it safe and sound, please tell the family. It's going to put everybody at ease. Those of you that lived here in '98, how many times did you call your house and hope that your answering machine would kick in? Okay, right? My dad did it. The house is fine. How do you know? I kept calling the house. The answering machine kept kicking in. It's until we tell FP&L to turn off the power. Now your answering machine doesn't work, okay? Call Uncle Vinny, right? Make sure Uncle Vinny knows. Right? You're all laughing. They're going, how did he meet my Uncle Vinny? I don't get it, right?
Uncle Vinny, he knows everything.
Uncle Vinny. Hey. You know what I'm saying over here, you know? All right. How many of you take medication other than me? Anybody take medication? Yeah, okay. You're all laughing at me at this point. Okay. Here's the kicker. You're going to have a large supply of meds. Now, when I say a large supply, try to keep at least 30 days okay, going. Now, we've talked about evacuations, and we saw this in '98. When we shut down and we evacuated, Walmart's pharmacy shuts down. Okay? Roman is a nice guy, right? You all know Roman. He's the guy that does the... Roman can't get in. Now, the reality of it is, back to the phone. I've got Roman's phone number. Roman is my friend. But Roman's not going to come open up the pharmacy unless it's an emergency. You have to have a supply of whatever it is you take for at least 30 days. Now you're going to say, but my insurance company won't fill my prescription, right? How do I know all this stuff, right? Okay? Talk to your doctor. Doctors will work it out. Now I'm talking serious stuff. Any of your heart medications, your blood pressure medications, those things that you really, really, really have to have, okay, to keep you going. You've got to keep a supply of this stuff on hand. Okay, you all got that one? This is yes, this is no. There you go. Okay, all right. Troy talked about evacuations and driving out of your neighborhood. Close your eyes and tell me how to get out of your neighborhood. Because you're all going to stand here and do this. For those of you on the radio, I'm making funny gestures with my eyes closed. Scary thing, 1998. Woman drove out of her driveway, turned left. It was so smoky, she thought she was at the stop sign. She turned right. She buried her car in the backyard garden of the neighbor 3 houses down. Okay? Smoke, panic, people yelling at you, you're all wired, you're going to forget. You're going to get in that zone and thought she was doing things right. Take a postcard, little 4x5 index cards. Write down, line by line, how to get out of your neighborhood, especially during fire season. Back your car into the garage or back it into your driveway so you get in and you can read how to get out of your neighborhood. We see it time and time again. We did it in Seminole Woods. People were very panicking. And it was down the street, make a left, you're on a main road. Flipping out, didn't know how to get out of there. The little basic things. It's human nature, okay? It's things that we take for granted. It's those things that you do every single day that are going to trip us up and get us confused, okay? You have to have supplies in the house, whether it's wildfire season or it's hurricane season. Bottled water is great, okay? I made the mistake. Well, I didn't make the mistake. I asked last year during fire season, y'all wanted to help. My southern Jersey coming out in me, y'all wanted to help. We need bottled water. We're getting gallon jugs. That's a wonderful thing for hurricanes to keep in your house. The guys can't put gallon jugs in their pockets, okay? Bottled water, an individual bottle of water is what we need. We carry them in our gear while we're fighting brush fires, okay? Buy them, use them in the house. They don't go bad. Side note to bottled water, Gatorades and power drinks. You need to buy, if you buy 3 cases of that, buy a case of the Powerade. There you go, keep drinking. Gotta hydrate, okay? Your electrolytes, you're gonna mess up your electrolytes and get out of balance and you're gonna get sick. I did that last year. Couldn't get out of bed for 2 days. When I did, I was on the floor. Muscle spasms and back cramps and because your electrolytes get wacky. So you gotta take care of yourself while you're going through all these different things, okay? I got all these looks of, oh my God, what else? But it's basic stuff. And there's nobody's house in here worth riding a storm out, okay? A couple things Troy didn't throw at you. We don't come when the wind hits 50 or actually 40 miles an hour. Those big red fire trucks are like billboards. They will turn over at a 40-mile-an-hour storm. We're not coming. So if you're home, be prepared to stay home. We can't come get you, okay? Things to think about. You'd all like to go see Uncle Vinny up north, I'm sure, right? Just a woman's going, yeah, we can go to Stillwell and surf and go to Nathan's, right? Questions on anything so far? We don't have all the answers, but we got a lot of the answers. We've all been here many years, other than I never went fishing in Michigan. But, ma'am.
You mentioned about driving out of an area when it's smoke-laden, and we were down in Seminole Woods during this last series. There were times we couldn't see through the smoke.
Absolutely.
Now, I have heard different things about which lights you should use trying to drive through smoke. Is there a recommendation? Headlights, high beams, no lights?
You want to use your low beams. Your high beams are gonna bounce back like fog.
Okay, so that's probably the best.
The trick to this is watch these guys tag into our stuff and know where the fires are. We do our best.
What source can we use to pinpoint the fires?
Well,
because the state of Florida Fire Management,
no, you want to listen to
pinpoint it.
Yeah, you want to go to WNZF. We've actually talked to them from the fire line. When we know that they're calling, we try to make a concerted effort to get on and tell them where we are. The city's website, the county's websites, both of them, we're trying to update them constantly. The other half of it is watching the weather, because in our world, that's a big factor.
Yeah, but we don't get Bright House.
Big factor.
What happens that
Computer.
we don't get Bright House?
You got a computer? You can get them on a computer.
Yeah, I get them on the computer.
Get them on a computer, or try to tag into one of those updates. We try to update, anybody on Facebook? Well, you all laugh. We're all on Facebook. The city's got a Facebook account. And what we try to do, especially during those bad times, we try, if we can get somebody to dedicate to it, and we try to update the Facebook account and try to get people out there. I don't know that we're tweeting. Am I saying that? I don't tweet. But you know, in the olden days, we used to call each other. What a concept. Now we talk to each other on those things. Try to get hooked up with whatever technology you have available. And we do our best. There's times when we're out in the field and we can't update it. I know last year, though, we tried an awful lot to keep that update, to keep you all abreast of what's going on. Worst case scenario, drive out and drive within the area. Now, I don't say go into the fire zones. We do our best to keep our fire. I know our fire police keep the main road open, and you can go down and say, hey, should I be concerned? We've had hundreds of people. Should I be concerned? Where do you live? Pine Lakes. No, not really. We're in Matanzas Woods, or we're wherever we are. You know, those kinds of things. So our fire police are out in the middle of the street, are usually got that knowledge, and police officers as well. Dana? Sure.
Let me get you on the mic, please.
We love suggestions. That's how we learn. We learn from this stuff.
Basic suggestion, if you could invest in a inexpensive GPS. If you're driving out of the neighborhood, you miss your direction, direct you back to
Great idea. And keep it programmed.
Yes.
While you're talking GPS, don't put your home address in your GPS. It's been known if your car is stolen, you have a GPS in it, they will hit your home button, and if they have your keys, they will drive to your house. So I got a guy that's not really like a good friend of mine who lives about 4 blocks away. His address is in my GPS. Just saying. Just saying, they won't show up at my house. But that's a true story. Don't put your address in your GPS.
Just to comment on the GPS, our GPS did not work very well when we were coming back after evacuating from Hurricane Ivan.
Really?
There was that we had to actually use maps because we had to use all the back roads coming in from Birmingham, Alabama to come back to Pensacola.
You mean those paper things, man?
Yeah, the paper things.
Wow.
That I didn't know how to fold very well.
Wow.
My son can fold them better than I can.
Yeah, call the backup, plan B. You know, and it's interesting, if you do have a GPS, make sure you get it updated as well. I learned that the hard way going around D.C. about 1.5 years ago. Didn't know you could go through D.C. that way, but I learned the hard way. So yeah, backup, Atlas, got one in my car. Got one in my fire car, my personal car. We're here if you need some questions. I know we have another presentation. Food, oh, you cooking? Oh, really? I'm gonna turn it back over to Troy, and I hope he's not cooking because I've eaten his food before.
Now, I want you to look at Mike,
you.
and I want you to look at me. We eat quite well at the Emergency Operations Center, so we don't miss many meals.
We on the fire line don't.
Those who saw the flyer saw that Sharon Treen was going to be with us to talk about preparing for disasters, your food and drinking water supply. Sharon called us this morning and had laryngitis. So, unfortunately, she can't be with us. But we brought in the next best thing. We brought in Jennifer Stagg, who's the Emergency Management Planner from the Emergency Operations Center. Jennifer?
Hello, there we go. All right, now we're live. Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Stagg. I'm the planner with Flagler County Emergency Management. And I will ask you to please bear with me because Sharon has taught me this presentation, but this is kind of my baptism by fire and giving it to you. One of the things that's interesting for me is as a planner, I spend most of my time thinking about what we're doing in the EOC and what my job's going to be during an emergency. And I often will have people ask me very specific questions about what should I put in my disaster supply kit, or what do I need when you say food for 2 weeks or 3 days or whatever the case may be. And I quite often will say, go to the website, go to this internet, you'll find resources on what to get. But the truth of the matter is I really haven't ever kind of been in my own situation where I had to think about those things. So I'm going to go over this kind of quickly, but I think there's a lot of good things in here that if you hadn't necessarily been in the situation before, or even if you hadn't, it's been a while, that there's some very good pointers in here. When we're preparing for an emergency, and I don't know about you, but if you're at home and the lights go out, doesn't it feel like all of a sudden you're in a completely different world and you feel lost? You just don't realize how much we are dependent on electricity, and within a couple of minutes, it's the twilight zone. Think about that if this is going to be ongoing and there's stressful conditions outside and you might not have enough food, water. definitely not a situation you want to put yourself in. And one of the things that we've been stressing this afternoon is that they are survivable. Disasters, hurricanes are survivable if you are prepared. One of the things that you want to consider when you're looking at your disaster supply kit and what kind of food that you would need for the time is you want to consider what dietary needs there might be. Does anybody have any special diabetic concerns? Are there children, pediatric concerns, picky eaters even? That's going to be a big deal if you can't get people to, calm down enough. Certainly not going to help them feel better if you're giving them stuff they don't necessarily want to eat. Another thing to consider is we always talk about non-perishable items in our disaster supply kit. Canned food, it's pretty high in sodium. So if you have issues with eating sodium, that might be something that you really need to consider ahead of time is, even though I have food, is it something that's going to cause, again, more problems? Just like Chief Beadle said, if you are on certain medications or if you don't have access to those resources, you certainly don't want to aggravate the situation by eating something that could exacerbate the situation. One of the things that you want to do with your food and water supply is you want to rotate it out. It's a great thing to have it on hand. It's good to know that it's there, but it's important not to just let it sit there. A good way to look at this is to rotate your stock both at the beginning of hurricane season and at the end of hurricane season. That way you've got food that's fresh, and that if you had some fruit like this, and I encourage you to come up here and take a look at some of the visuals I have, but if you can't tell, it looks what was once maybe some mandarin orange slices. It's a lovely brown color for those of you that can't see it. That might be a little bit of a surprise when you think, hey, my pantry's full, I've got some orange slices, we're going to have a great time. You pick it out, storms over your head, that's not going to get eaten. So that's not necessarily a good idea. You want to also consider what you're storing your food in, as far as certain containers are better for storing water than they are for drinking water versus water that you're going to use for sanitation purposes or what have you. With water, okay, let me ask this. How many people know how much water you need per person per day? It's kind of up there. Good. Good, but that's considering, is that just for drinking? Is that going to be for cleansing? And I think that this myth has kind of been dispelled, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do we know why we fill the tub up with water? Flush the toilet. It's not to drink. I have people tell me that. I'm like, I don't know about your tub. I mean, I clean my tub pretty regularly, but I wouldn't want to stick a straw in it and drink out of it, that's for sure. Another thing to consider is that when you're more active, you're going to consume more water. It's going to be hot generally during hurricane season. You're going to be perspiring a lot more. So it would be wise to cut down your activities, maybe encourage kids to not play so much as when they're getting active, maybe read, do puzzles, just try to keep the calm level so that people aren't using or consuming too much energy. Main point of all of this is plan ahead. Again, we go back to 1 gallon per person per day, but does that mean if you have people that have medical conditions or elderly folks with you or nursing mothers who might, again, need more water than what you would when you're not facing those kind of conditions? One of the things that I thought was interesting is you don't want to ration water. Why do you think that is? It's essential. Water is pretty much essential. That's not something we can go without. We can go without food, and yes, it'll be uncomfortable, but water is definitely not something you want to go without. So if you find that you're running low on water, don't ration it out, but begin to make plans of how we're going to resolve the situation, whether it's depending on neighbors or turning to your local media to see if there's any distribution sites where we're getting together and passing out food and water. But again, plan ahead. That's the most important thing, and don't ration your water. When you store your water, it's best to put it in a cool, dry place. I know a lot of people throw it in the garage, right? It takes up space. It's kind of hard to find somewhere to put it, but by storing it in the garage, you're putting it into more harsh conditions and maybe making it to where it might not be drinkable or potable after it's been sitting there for a while. So consider where you're storing it and consider the containers that you're putting it in. The plastic soda bottles, the 2-liter soda bottles, work really well for storing water. You don't want to use a milk jug necessarily for drinking water, and the reason being is the milk residue can get caught in the handle and can cause kind of funky conditions that probably, especially if it's been sitting in something that's a little bit warmer than room temperature, won't be so friendly if you try to drink it. Again, back to the non-perishable food supply, chances are if you won't eat it in a non-disaster time, you're not going to eat it during a disaster time. And maybe not so much for you, but those of your family members that are staying with you. Because typically in our day, even though we might have our family all there, that we're going different places and doing different things and eating different things. Just think about a compressed situation where you're all there and you try to give a kid a can of sardines or something. They're probably not going to be received very well. So don't buy food. Don't go to the grocery store in a mad rush and buy something because, oh, it's non-perishable and now my disaster supply kit's set. That's what we mean by planning ahead and thinking about it. If it's sitting in your pantry for a long time not getting used, don't go buy more of it in the hopes that you're going to use it during a disaster. The other thing you want to watch too is that people turn to food in stressful conditions, and they might begin to overindulge and eat as a means to calm themselves. So going and buying a bunch of cookies or things like that might sound good in theory, but might not be the best idea, especially because we want to try to minimize the amount of food that we have to eat, maximizing the calories, and that's good calories, not just throwaway calories like we hear about in diet or regular Cokes and candies and whatnot. When you rotate your food supply, if you can't see where the date is, or I don't know about you, after a while the date will wear off, or you can't tell if it's a 9, a 6, or a 0, just get a marker out and write the date on there very clearly so that you know. Some of these things are common sense. You want to keep it in a cool, dry place. Replace it when it's dated or goes out of date. Keep it covered tightly and inspect food for all signs of spoilage and pests. A lot of people like to store the milk, but if you look at the container, just make sure you don't see where it's degrading at all. And this would be one of those things that you want to rotate out regularly. Again, people that are healthy or are relatively healthy can survive on less food than what they think they need. And that's something you can ration. That's something that if you notice your food supply is getting low, ration the food, don't ration the water. And again, just another reminder, don't get foods that are high in fat or salty. They make you thirsty. That's going to make you consume more water. So we're trying to avoid a self-propelling prophecy here with making ourselves consume more than we need. Special considerations. I don't know about you, but one of the things that I hear, people get all these cans of food together, and then suddenly they realize the electricity's out. How do I open the can? Very important that if you're going to get a bunch of canned stuff that you have a way to get into it. Yeah, the old-fashioned way. That doesn't require batteries or a plug. You don't want to forget your pets. That's another thing, too. They've got to eat. They are going to need some snacks and some treats. So just like you're considering dietary concerns for others in your family that have special considerations, take your pets into consideration as well. Make sure you know about people's allergies. If you have a situation where you're going to be housing people that, even though they might be related or that you know them, make sure you've figured that out ahead of time, what their allergies are. Because, as Chief Beadle said, it might be a situation where first responders are unable to get to you, so we certainly don't want to create a situation and giving somebody something that will make them allergic or get their allergies act up. You want to, prior to the storm, and we've been stressing that too, is that you have time before the storm to make preparations. This includes, if your freezer isn't already full, maybe filling up some of the little water jugs and putting them in there and getting them frozen so that you can anticipate the electricity going out. One of the other things you might want to consider is, instead of using regular dishes that consumes water to clean. Get a bunch of paper goods that you can throw away, then you're conserving water that way too. You want to freeze refrigerated items such as leftovers, milk, and fresh meat and poultry that you may not need immediately. It's also a good idea that if you have these types of foods, rather than waiting to cook it when the electricity's out, go ahead and cook it ahead of time, because it'll keep longer and it'll store better, and your ability to keep it in a way that can be eaten later is increased if you actually cook the food ahead of time and then refrigerate it or freeze it. Pack the freezers up. The refrigerator, foods in the refrigerator are only good for about 4 hours. If the electricity goes out and it's only going to be out for a couple hours, then you're going to be okay to eat that food. After 4 hours, you don't want to eat the food in the refrigerator anymore. So then it would make sense that if we're anticipating the electricity going to be out for a while, to eat the food that's in the refrigerator first. In the freezer can go much longer. What a good way to tell is if something is still edible in the freezer, as long as it still has ice crystals on it, then it's okay. If the ice crystals aren't there, it's been in there too long, it's spoiled. If you have evacuated and you know that the power went off, but you're not sure how long it was off, therefore you're not sure if you can eat your foods in your refrigerator, ask a neighbor, because the power may have gone off and come back on. You come back, the food is cold again. Don't make the assumption that just because it's cold again that means it didn't go through a spoiling process. So check with your neighbors. One of the interesting things that Sharon also brought up, that I don't know how many people have a fondue pot, but I'm sure it's one of those great tools that looked really neat when you bought it, but it's probably not something that gets used a whole lot. Well, here you go. Here's a great way to make use of that and not feel so bad about having it somewhere in your junk in your kitchen. As it's a great tool to use, doesn't require electricity. And you can even, if you take cans and take the labels off of them, cook the food in the can. So then again, you're not wasting paper plates or creating excess debris. Let's see. After the emergency, you want to keep the refrigerator and the freezer doors, or after the electricity's gone off, you want to keep it closed. One of the things that I thought was interesting as well was taking an inventory of what is in your refrigerator and freezer. Instead of opening it each time to see what you want, figure out what you want before you open it. That way you're minimizing the amount of time that the door is open and thus that the cold air is escaping. A full freezer is going to hold the temperature for approximately 48 hours. 24 hours if it's half full and the door remains closed. Food may be safely refrozen if it still contains the ice crystals. So keep that in mind. If you see ice crystals, you're good to go. If the power has been out for several days, check the temperature of the freezer with an appliance, a kitchen thermometer, food thermometer. If the thermometer has not been kept in the freezer, check each package of food to determine its safety. Remember, it's pretty certain that you're not going to be able to look at a package unless you can see through it like that. Even if there's no outside damage, sometimes you're not going to be able to see or smell or even taste bacteria. So that's why it's important to know ahead of time what the timing is, how long it can stay, what kind of foods to eat, what are good for you, instead of just making assumptions after the fact. A lot of times in disasters, and I'm sure anybody that's worked in them can tell you, is that 9 times out of 10, the tragedies that happen from disasters doesn't occur because of the storm or because the fire. Occurs afterwards from people doing silly things. And they're in a chaotic environment, they're not thinking, and they get themselves into trouble. So the important parts to remember is to keep a checklist, get your disaster supply kit ready, have your special needs, which includes medications as we've talked about, and your short-term and long-term food and water plans. Back there, when you came in, there was a stapled packet about hurricane preparation, a Q&A guide to water and food safety. All of the stuff that I just said, and even so in more detail, is going to be in here. So if you didn't get something written down or if you have questions, this is where basically this whole presentation has come from. So be sure to take one of these, and if you have any other questions for myself or anybody else on the panel, that's what I have to share.
Third time. Okay. Okay. Amber, I think we're back, yes? Can you all hear me? Okay. Jeff, if you'll join me over there. It's working now.
Yeah.
I want to take a moment to thank the City of Palm Coast, WNZF News Radio 1550, 106.3 FM for helping us broadcast today, our technical guys in the back. But most importantly, I want to thank our panel up here for being here, helping you get some information. Hopefully it was a little educational, a little informative. But I thank you for your time, and I'll let Mr. Jeff Day, Chief Meteorologist, as News 13, close us out.
All right. I, again, appreciate very much the invitation to be here. And, again, it's important for us to stay safe. And it's not just the tropical season. It's round the clock, as we talked about fires. I can tell you when I moved here in the fall of '97, I was wondering what I got myself into, because we went through a very quiet fall. It was beautiful. My wife was like, yeah, this is nice. Growing up in Wisconsin, this is terrific. And then we moved into the tornado outbreak early that spring that took 42 lives down in the Orlando area. And then that was followed up by heat and fires burning across Central Florida. And the smoke's burning Volusia up here into Flagler County. We'd step outside in downtown Orlando, and that smoke would billow back our way, and it just reeked. I mean, it was terrible. The air quality, there was no air quality that summer. And the periods that follow, the storm systems that come into play. So here in Central Florida, we always have to make sure we're set. And again, you know, having these supply kits, some will say you don't need those. I don't need to have that on standby. You always have them in place. One thing I wanted to add, you have to be very careful. I know you're going to agree with me on this one. You know, crock pot's great. Be very careful with flames. As was mentioned, you get into a post-storm or especially in the storm action, the fire crew isn't going to be able to come out and help you, okay? You have to be very careful. Do not use candles. People have candles in their homes. They used to be on the list. It was on the list. They have finally taken candles off the list. Flashlights, batteries, you can get things, and we talked about the can opener. That's another one, batteries. Try to run to the hardware store or to the grocery store, the home improvement store, whatever, and try to get batteries as that storm's coming ashore and people are running. You're not going to find them, or you'll find them with a great price tag on them. And it's the same thing. You can cycle through those. We keep a nice stock and supply at our house, and you just use them as you need them. Rotate through, but have those batteries and standby, and make sure you play it really careful. And just keep a close eye on things. Not every storm that forms, tropical-wise, or every firestorm, whatever it is going to be in your neighborhood. But all it takes, as you pointed out, and I pointed out earlier too, all it takes is one. Okay? And we want to make sure we're prepared for that. And if it stays away, great. We can all get together next year and have a party, right? Yeah. But we really appreciate any other questions. We really appreciate you stopping by. Spread the word to your friends and family around the community, okay? And make sure that they're prepared too. And we'll ride through and see how things work out, okay? Thank you very much for coming.